For over 2,000 years, Petra has stood as Jordan's crown jewel, a rose-red city carved into rock, admired by millions and protected as one of the world's greatest treasures.
There were ancient treasures, which were ancient even then, being found, that were finding their way through Petra.
Archaeologists thought they knew it inside and out. They were wrong. In 2024, a sealed chamber hidden beneath it was finally opened. What they found inside wasn't just unexpected, it was horrifying. Petra, the rose-red city that still holds secrets. Petra is one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world. It is an ancient city in Jordan carved directly into rock cliffs by the Nabataeans more than 2,000 years ago. The Nabataeans were an ancient Arab people who first lived as nomadic traders, but later grew wealthy by controlling caravan routes that carried spices, incense, and silk across the desert. With their wealth, the Nabataeans built cities, temples, and tombs, and Petra became their greatest achievement.
This culture is very mysterious because their origins are debated.
They were hidden. They were hidden even in ancient times.
Incredible architects, incredible water engineers, but also incredible caravan traders.
To reach Petra's most recognizable structure, the Treasury, visitors must pass through the Psyche. The Sikh is a narrow walkway between high rock walls that stretches for about a kilometer. At the end of this path, the Treasury suddenly comes into view.
It opens up into this canyon and you get that view, one of the most famous, one of the most impressive views in the world.
It is tall, wide, and carved with detailed columns and sculptures that resemble a palace. Many first-time visitors are stunned that such a precise and elaborate monument was carved by hand so long ago. For centuries, locals believed that the Treasury was not simply a tomb or temple. A popular story claimed that it held the hidden wealth of a pharaoh. This idea came from the large carved urn placed at the very top of the Treasury's outer wall, which many thought contained gold. According to reports, bullet marks can still be seen on the urn, left by people who tried to break it open. Archaeologists, however, have found no treasure there. They argue that the true purpose of the Treasury remains uncertain. Some believe it was a royal tomb, others think it had a religious function, and some even suggest it may have served multiple roles over time. The Nabataeans carved hundreds of other rock-cut structures into the cliffs of Petra. Most of them are tombs. Because of this, archaeologists often describe Petra as a city of the dead. Burial chambers are spread across the valley, but even among them, the Treasury stands apart. It is larger, more decorated, and positioned at the entrance of the city. This makes researchers think it played a special role. If Petra was already a city of tombs, then the idea that its greatest monument might also hide burials beneath it became easier to believe. Most tourists come to Petra, take photographs of the Treasury, and leave without asking what lies beneath the ground. Yet for decades, archaeologists suspected that the site might hold more than what is visible. Some locals have claimed that Petra contains sealed rooms and hollow areas hidden inside the stone. According to reports, even the sound of striking certain spots near the Treasury gives a hollow echo, as if something is buried below. Others say people avoided parts of the forecourt at night, believing it was unsafe. These stories were never confirmed, but they kept the mystery alive. For years, archaeologists could only imagine what was below, with no way to test their theories. This is why the eventual discovery of a sealed space beneath the Treasury shocked so many. For the first time, evidence suggested that Petra was still hiding secrets that no modern person had ever seen. The idea of a locked chamber led to urgent questions. Why was it sealed? What did the Nabataeans want to hide? Was it a royal tomb, a sacred vault, or something so disturbing that it was never meant to be opened? Before these questions could even begin to be answered, archaeologists had to clear the biggest obstacle of all: getting permission to dig beneath the treasury. The permission no one gets. The area in front of the treasury, known as the forecourt, was seen as untouchable. This was where thousands of visitors stood every day. It was where guides told stories, where photographs were taken, and where people formed their first impression of Petra. To disturb that ground was considered too risky and too politically sensitive. For many years, the answer to archaeologists was always the same: no excavation would ever be allowed there. This did not stop archaeologists from trying. Teams submitted proposals again and again, hoping that their methods would convince the authorities. But officials decided the risks outweighed the rewards. The fear was simple. If the treasury was damaged in any way, Jordan would lose both a national treasure and one of its main sources of income. According to reports, archaeologists pushed for decades without success. They argued that advances in technology meant excavation could be carried out safely. They promised careful documentation and minimal disturbance, but the refusal always returned. The treasury was too important to touch. But in 2024, something finally changed. After years of debate, Jordan's Department of Antiquities gave approval for a limited excavation under some of the strictest terms ever placed on a dig. The decision was not taken lightly. Officials made it clear that the project was not about treasure hunting. It was about research, and every move had to protect the integrity of the monument. The rules were precise. Every trench had to be reversible. This meant that after the work was complete, the ground could be restored, as if nothing had been touched. Every action was to be monitored and recorded in detail. Each grain of soil was to be documented before removal. The project was designed to be more like a surgical operation than an open excavation. A coalition of groups was formed to carry out the work. The Petra Development and Tourism Region Authority oversaw the site's role as a tourist destination. The Petra National Trust provided local expertise and ensured that the community's interests were respected. The American Center of Research gave the excavation its logistical support and long-standing credibility in Jordan. The University of St. Andrews added advanced scanning and dating technologies. Each group brought something different, and together they built the kind of trust needed for such a sensitive project. Even with all these measures in place, unease remained. Some experts worried that even a small miscalculation could cause cracks to appear in the treasury. Some locals whispered that the Nabataeans had sealed certain places for a reason, and that disturbing them might bring consequences no one could predict. Whether these concerns were based on science or superstition, they weighed heavily on the team. Before any digging could begin, the team needed to know what was under the treasury without touching it. Digging blindly was not an option. They turned to non-invasive tools that could scan beneath the surface. Anomaly, faced with both opportunity and risk. The archaeologists knew they could not dig blindly. Before a single stone was touched, they turned to modern technology, tools capable of peering through the ground and revealing what lay hidden without causing harm. Ground-penetrating radar was used to send pulses into the soil and record how they bounced back, revealing differences in density. Resistivity surveys measured how well the ground carried electrical currents, which can show if walls or cavities are hidden below. Magnetometry tracked small changes in the magnetic field that often appear where humans have built or cut into stone. Each of these methods had limits, but together they gave archaeologists a way to build a picture of what was hidden. Inside a temporary field tent, the results appeared on glowing screens. Lines and shapes rippled across the monitors. To many of the researchers, the patterns looked like signals of a heartbeat. pulsing with each sweep of the radar. At first, the readings were ordinary. They showed the known drainage channels that the Nabataeans had carved to protect the Treasury from floods. They also picked up natural cracks in the sandstone that were expected. Nothing unusual appeared during the early passes, and some of the team began to wonder if the scans would only confirm what was already known. But then, something unexpected came into view. Among the ordinary features was a shape that did not match the rest. It was sharply defined, rectangular, and regular in its edges. Unlike fissures or drains, this feature looked intentional, as though it had been cut by human hands. At first, some members of the team thought the machine was producing an error. Yet when the same pattern appeared in repeated scans, the room grew quiet. Everyone realized they were looking at something different. The anomaly was larger than expected, buried deeper than the tourist tunnels, and unlike anything ever documented beneath the Treasury. On paper, it was recorded with a neutral label, Anomaly C. But privately, away from the official notes, the archaeologists began calling it something else. Around the campfires at night, they spoke of it as the locked chamber. The name carried meaning. It suggested secrecy and purpose, as if the Nabataeans had not only created this space, but had also gone to great effort to keep it sealed. The scans revealed edges too straight to be natural and a void too perfectly shaped to be accidental. One archaeologist later remarked, "It looks like someone made this room and then wanted no one to ever enter it again." Speculation began to spread. Some of the team believed it could be a hidden tomb, perhaps belonging to Petra's elite. Others thought it might be part of a forgotten water system. According to local rumors, the Nabataeans sometimes sealed places to keep dangerous things contained, such as plague victims, cursed remains, or objects tied to forbidden rituals. None of these theories could be proven, but the possibilities made the discovery even more unsettling. The scans had revealed enough to prove that something was there. The only way forward was excavation. But disturbing the ground beneath the Treasury would not be simple. It would mean peeling back the earth layer by layer. Knowing each step brought them closer to a chamber the Nabataeans may have wanted sealed forever. Breaking the seal. A descent into darkness. When excavation finally began, the atmosphere around the Treasury was tense. Everyone knew this was not an ordinary dig. At first, the team used standard tools to remove the upper layers of soil. But as they reached the area close to the sealed structure, they changed their approach. Brushes and wooden implements replaced metal, making sure that no scratch or spark would damage what lay hidden below. The site was treated with extreme care. Every move was deliberate, as if they were peeling back the layers of a wound that had been closed for centuries. Soil was removed in the thinnest layers, sometimes only a few centimeters at a time. Every handful was sifted, photographed, and logged. Even the smallest pieces of pottery or charcoal were collected for later analysis. According to reports, the team worked in rotating shifts to keep progress steady without rushing. The site was treated like a patient in surgery, where precision mattered more than speed. The deeper they went, the more compact the soil became. Centuries of pressure had made it heavy and dense, forcing archaeologists to work slowly and carefully. Then, the first sign of something intentional appeared. Carved steps began to take shape, pointing downward into darkness. Not long after, smoothed stone walls emerged, holding the soil back as though the builders had prepared the space to stay sealed for eternity. The masonry shocked the team. It was not rough or improvised. The blocks were cleanly cut and fitted so tightly that no cracks or gaps allowed even a trickle of air. The chamber had been closed in a way that suggested permanence. Some archaeologists remarked that it looked less like an ordinary closure and more like deliberate entombment. That raised an unsettling question. Who sealed the chamber, and why? One theory is that workers may have been forced to seal it while fully aware of what was inside. Imagine slaves or lower-class laborers stacking the final blocks while screams echoed behind them. Another possibility is that the sealing was ordered directly by Nabataean elites, not to honor the dead, but to bury a crime or a shameful act they wanted erased. The perfection of the seal suggested fear, not reverence. Whoever closed the chamber wanted it forgotten by the living world. Cameras captured the moment when the sealed cavity finally widened into an opening. Cold, stale air escaped into the trench. It carried the smell of dust that had been trapped for nearly 2,000 years. One archaeologist later said it felt like breathing in the past. Another admitted that stepping closer felt wrong, as if they were intruding on a place that had never meant to be disturbed. Theories spread quickly. Experts speculated that it might have been a ritual chamber. According to local whispers, the Nabataeans sometimes sealed off places not to protect them, but to protect the living from what was inside. Some said chambers were closed to contain plague, locking away the source of infection so it could never spread. Others believed dangerous idols or forbidden texts were hidden underground, sealed to prevent their use in dark ceremonies. A few even claimed such spaces were cursed, marked as places where spirits of the restless dead were trapped. None of these theories could be proven, but all of them carried a sense of unease. The void beneath the treasury was not a simple cavity. It was larger, more deliberate, and far more unsettling than anyone had expected. And as the team prepared to go further, it became clear that they were about to uncover something terrifying. The tomb in the shadow of the treasury. Once the opening was safe, the team stepped inside with strong lights and careful movements. The chamber was not a rough cave formed by nature. It was shaped with precision. Small wall openings lined the walls at regular intervals. In Nabataean tombs, such features were not decorated. They often held offerings, secondary burials, or symbolic objects. The layout showed that this place had been planned, not improvised. Then came the moment that froze the team. Skeletons began to appear. The first lay intact on a low stone ledge, its bones still connected in the correct order. Skull at the top, spine in line, arms at the sides, and legs stretched below. This meant the burial had never been disturbed. A few feet away, another skeleton rested in the same position. As more light spread through the chamber, the count increased. At least 12 individuals were present. Some were adults, but others were smaller, most likely children. None of them were scattered. None were dumped in haste. They had been placed carefully, each in a deliberate position. Some were arranged alone in niches, while others lay in pairs, suggesting possible ties between them. Objects lay beside many of the skeletons. A small bowl rested near one person's hand. A jar sat close to another's feet. Thin traces of bronze and iron appeared in the soil near ribs and hips, possibly fragments of jewelry or fittings. One skeleton had a ceramic vessel pressed against the ribs, positioned so precisely that it looked as if the person had held it in their final moments. These were not extravagant grave goods, yet they were chosen and arranged with intent, suggesting that the value of the burial was symbolic rather than material. What unsettled the archaeologists most was the condition of the chamber. Unlike most of Petra's tombs, which had been looted or damaged by floods, this one was sealed tight. Sediment had settled like a lock, preserving everything in place. The air was stale. The walls looked untouched. For researchers accustomed to broken fragments, the preservation felt uncanny. Several later admitted that the silence inside the room was unnerving. as if time itself had been paused, and they were intruding on a story that was never meant to be interrupted. Work slowed further. Specialists recorded the exact position of every bone. Conservators stabilized fragile remains and collected each object with strict labels. The chamber already raised troubling questions, but the team began to suspect that what they had seen so far was only part of the story. Beneath the Treasury, the Earth still held a sealed space that no light had touched for centuries. The sealed room, a horrifying revelation. When the sealed chamber was finally breached, the silence was crushing. The air that rushed out was foul and suffocating. Masks were pulled on immediately, but even through filters the smell clung, a mixture of rot, soot, and something sharp that made breathing feel unnatural. One archaeologist later said it felt like inhaling death itself. The first sweep of light revealed blackened walls streaked with soot, as though fire had once burned inside the chamber. But the floor told the most shocking story. Unlike the orderly burials in the previous chamber, these bodies had no dignity. They were heaped together from end to end, twisted in unnatural positions. Limbs were tangled, skulls tilted at odd angles, some face down, others sprawled across each other. The arrangement was not careful placement. It was haste. It was fear. It was violence. Bones revealed the truth of their final moments. Several skeletons bore fractures that could not be explained by natural collapse. Skulls were cracked, ribs were snapped, joints were wrenched apart. A few had jaws locked wide, frozen in expressions that resembled screams. Among them, one of the most haunting images was of a child's remains curled into the arms of an adult. The two had fused together by centuries of sediment, locked forever in what looked like a last, terrified embrace. The discoveries only grew stranger. Near one wall, 3 skeletons had been placed side by side with unusual care. One of them carried traces of jewelry and fine bronze fittings, signs of higher status. The other 2 were younger, their bones showing signs of violent death. Some specialists speculated that these 2 may have been killed to serve as escorts, sacrificed to accompany the elite figure into the afterlife. The very idea divided the team. Some refused to believe Petra's people practiced human sacrifice, while others pointed out that the placement was deliberate and could not be ignored. Scattered among the piled dead were vessels that did not resemble the usual Nabataean offerings. Their residue clung thick and organic, resisting easy identification. Early analysis hinted at iron-rich traces. Whispers quickly spread that it could have been human blood mixed with ash or bone powder. Others suggested foul ritual brews made for ceremonies that may have accompanied the killings. The darkest speculation was that these jars were used for forced drinking before death, or smeared onto the bodies as part of preparation for a ritual. The chamber did not feel ceremonial. It felt desperate. Every detail suggested people had been forced inside, locked away, and deliberately erased from the world above. Some argued that if it was plague, the sealing made sense to protect the living. But if it was massacre or sacrifice, the silence pointed to something darker, a deliberate cover-up. There were no inscriptions, no records, no signs of remembrance. Only stone meant to bury the truth. This sharp contrast between the careful burials in the first chamber and the chaos here raised disturbing questions. Why were some laid out neatly on stone ledges, with bowls, jars, and symbolic objects, while the ones here were cruelly tossed together without dignity? Some specialists believed that those buried with care may have been chosen sacrifices, arranged in a way that gave them symbolic importance. The piled bodies, on the other hand, could represent panic or punishment, a group condemned together in haste. One unsettling theory suggested the chamber may have started as a tomb for Petra's elite, but was later reused in a time of crisis, such as plague, invasion, or rebellion, to hide mass deaths. The contrast created a chilling image. It suggested that Petra's rulers decided who was worthy of honor and who was discarded like waste, their memories sealed in silence beneath the city's most celebrated monument. To some, the Treasury itself became the mask, projecting wealth and power to the outside world while hiding a pit of horror beneath its foundations. And according to unverified rumors, not all the findings have been released to the public. Some archaeologists claim that agencies and tourism boards are suppressing the full details to protect Petra's image as a wonder of the world. The horror lay not just in the bones, but in the intent. Someone had built this chamber, filled it, and sealed it with the clear purpose of erasing its memory. Whatever happened inside was never meant to be seen again. And with that revelation, Petra's most iconic monument became the keeper of its most disturbing secret. Echoes of Darkness, the legacy of the discovery. The sealed chamber beneath Petra is no longer a rumor. It is fact. What it means, however, is still debated fiercely. Scholars are now setting up careful programs of study to make sure conclusions are based on science rather than fear. The plan is to let the evidence speak first. DNA testing may show if the dead were part of the same family, outsiders brought in, or individuals chosen for reasons we cannot yet explain. Some believe the results could reveal connections to regions outside Petra, which would suggest migration or crisis movements. Others expect the profiles to show long-established Nabataean families. Either answer would shift how Petra's history is understood. Isotope analysis offers another set of clues. It can reveal what people ate and where they lived. If the bones show diets of imported foods, that would suggest high status. If they show only local grain and water, it might mean ordinary people caught in extraordinary events such as famine, disease outbreaks, or sudden conflict that forced mass burials. According to reports, residue analysis is also planned for the strange containers. The hope is to identify what they once held: wine, incense, medicinal mixtures, or something far more unsettling. Until those results come back, the questions remain open. Even without those answers, the impact of the discovery has already spread. Guides cannot describe the treasury in the same way again. It is no longer only a marvel of architecture. It is also the site of sealed deaths and unanswered fears. According to locals, some visitors now avoid certain corners of the forecourt after hearing what was uncovered. Officials are adjusting tourist routes and conservation strategies to balance access with respect for what was found. For archaeologists, the chamber is more than a discovery. It is a warning. Not everything uncovered should be treated as spectacle. Some spaces demand restraint, careful study, and humility. Petra has always been admired as a wonder of stone, but now it forces a harder truth. Beneath its beauty lie shadows deliberately locked away. The wider world must now ask a larger question. If Petra held a secret like this for nearly 2,000 years, what else lies hidden under the deserts of Jordan? And what would it mean if those secrets are disturbed? Petra is no longer just the rose-red city. It is also a city of sealed horrors, where the dead still whisper from behind stone walls. What do you think the sealed chamber was truly made for? Was it a plague barrier? A ritual vault? Or something even more disturbing? Share your thoughts in the comments. We would love to hear your theory.